Yesterday we talked on the show about this interview that Kevin Feige did, where he dropped a number of really interesting things. One of the things he dropped was the fact that he really regretted he was never able to get a Blade movie off the ground for Mahershala Ali. Does that mean the project's dead? Well, we talked about that. He also kind of mentioned that the fact that no, Secret Wars is not being split into two films, kind of debunking that fan theory. And he then also debunked the other one, saying no, Doomsday is not moving. A lot of people started to think it was going to move off that Doomsday date, and he said nope, it's staying. But there was one other thing that he dropped in that same interview with Happy, Sad, Confused. And that thing he kind of dropped was the fact that they asked him the question, is Marvel rebooting after Secret Wars? To which he just basically said, no, it's not rebooting. He said, we've got a roadmap from the comics, which is what I always go back to, he said, but it is not rebooting. Now, that can mean a number of different things for a guy like Kevin Feige. And actually, if we go and actually look at his actual statement, he said, no, he said, but I look at the comics as I always do in terms of our storytelling, both in Secret Wars, but particularly the Jonathan Hickman Secret Wars from 10 years ago. There's a nice roadmap to where we can go. So, a lot of people have been having a debate, guys, about a semantic debate. Are they going to reboot? Are they going to soft reboot? Are they going to do whatever? Here's what I'm taking away from Kevin Feige's statements. Going into this, I've always had my doubts that they were rebooting because they've already talked about they're doing Black Panther 3. Not Black Panther, the new Panther. Black Panther 3. They've already said they're getting Shang-Chi 2. We already know that Chris Hemsworth has said that they're already talking about doing the next Thor movie. So if the universe was rebooting in our traditional sense of and understanding of the word, well, none of that would be happening. So that's always kind of been in my head. Here's how I interpret what Kevin Feige said. They're not rebooting, but as in all things, some things are going to change. I think when you have an event like Secret Wars, regardless of how closely they follow the comic story or how far they drift away from it, certain things of their universe are going to change. Just like their world changed with a new Avengers team, and just like the world of the MCU changed when Thanos snapped his fingers. There's going to be changes, but I think what he's saying is, in the truest sense of the term, the MCU is not rebooting. I don't think we're going to get a new Tony Stark. I don't think we're going to get a new Steve Rogers. I don't know for that, of course. For all we know, Saturday night, Kevin Feige could come on stage and say, ladies and gentlemen, our new Tony Stark, Tony Shalhoub. And Tony Shalhoub comes out on stage as the new star. That would be a bold choice, by the way. Anyway, Rob, you read the comment from him. There's been a lot of discussion about how are they going to navigate after Secret Wars. And we're still about a year and a half away from even seeing Secret Wars. But how did you interpret what he said when he just said to the question, are you rebooting after Secret Wars? And he said, no. What do you think?
Well, it made me go back. I had been going through there's three Secret Wars omnibuses, which I have, and I'd been reading through everything. And what happens at the end of Secret Wars, after the whole battle world, if you'd call it incident, reality, what happened in the comics was Molecule Man and Reed Richards and fam rebuild the multiverse. I know. They rebuild the multiverse. The 616 universe is constructed, sort of rebuilt, but things from the Marvel Ultimate Universe were folded into it, like Miles Morales became a part of the 616. So I could see them doing something like that. Like, there is a multiverse, but it's now separated again. And the 616 would have the X-Men. And what happened was things like the X-Men, the 616 would be sort of reconfigured. So the X-Men have always been here. So what that would mean is that you could say that the X-Men as they existed in the Fox universe are canon in this new universe, and you're moving forward or something, but in a different way. I don't know, because they did allow for that reconfiguration. So it's going to be interesting because they've taken cues obviously from comic series, but they haven't necessarily duplicated them. Winter
Right.
Soldier was a
Yeah.
condensation of Ed Brubaker's run on the comic, and I think they did a pretty good job with that. But it makes sense to me that they would keep characters around. Like you could bring in X-23 to sort of, we saw her in
Deadpool, Wolverine.
to
Yep.
sort of take over the mantle. You could keep Hugh Jackman around if you wanted to. You could make him part of an elder statesman Illuminati. So you don't have to get rid of Chris Evans or Chris Hemsworth. You could keep them around, but when they need them, to bring them out. I mean, why not we saw the Illuminati on another Earth in Multiverse of Madness. So why not do that here? It leads the possibilities open, but also they can do things like bring out, I mean, maybe Tom Holland doesn't want to make another Spider-Man movie. I think a Miles Morales Spider-Man movie would do quite well, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, you got to get by that little thing called Sony first, letting you do it, which
I know.
which I don't see happening anytime immediately soon.
Well,
at
in live
any rate.
action, if they could continue, obviously there's Amy Pascal and Kevin Feige seem to be buddy going on the press.
Oh yeah.
circuit
Well,
together.
I mean, Kevin Feige just did an interview where he said like him and Amy have already been talking about the next 2 to 5 Spider-Man movies.
Yeah.
And by the way, he said we want to do Miles Morales once Sony lets us.
Right.
Once Sony says they're done and it's okay for us to do Miles Morales, but so they've got a lot of plans for Spider-Man. Anyway, Sean, there's been a lot of talk about, so what happens after Secret Wars? Kind of like the way a lot of people ask what happens after Endgame. Kevin Feige strictly asked, are you rebooting? And he says, no, but that could still mean a lot of things. How did you interpret what he said?
Yeah, the article you sent also included a quote he said last year to Variety where he said, reboot is a scary word. Reboot can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. Reset, singular timeline. We're thinking along those lines. And I think in and of itself, coming out of the multiverse saga, where one of the things that has been very exhausting for people is the multiple timelines, different versions.
Yeah.
There's the fun part of the multiverse saga, and then there's too many rules. It's kind of too scattershot. It's too fragmented. And so I hear that statement that he just made, the one from a year ago, and I go, we're trying to tighten it up again. We're trying to get back to what it was when it was this tight, exciting thing. And I think that is the right move, that get it focused again, that is a little bit more of a manageable size. Phases 4 and 5 felt like it got too big and wasn't as manageable.
Damn
and
right.
Keep track of everything. And so, let's shrink it down back to what it was before, which was still the biggest franchise in movie history. So it's not like small, but it's a size where the stories can intertwine a little bit better. The characters can interact a little bit more. And I think Rob probably made a really good point about there's a way that you kind of have your main timeline and you can merge some things in, you can change some things, and it's consistent with the rules that they've laid for their new singular timeline.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought for a long time, I remember when Kevin Feige first made that comment. I remember thinking for a long time that, it seems like, and I was very happy to see this, because I think the multiverse-ness of the saga has been a swing and a miss. I mean, one of my biggest problems, and Rob, you and I have talked about this a lot, is the fact that Marvel has never even been consistent with its own theories and ideas about what multiverse is. Like, its explanation in Endgame is completely different and contradictory to other dimensions as presented in Shang-Chi, which is completely different and contradictory to the idea of other dimensions that was presented in Ms. Marvel, which was completely different and contradictory to the ones they presented in Doctor Strange. So like even their own idea of multiversalism was taken away. And so I've kind of been looking forward to Secret Wars as kind of wrapping up the multiverse idea and bring it more, like you said, Sean, manageable. Because DC did the same thing in their comics with Crisis, right? Like that's like when things got unruly, they brought it back down to earth and made it a little bit more manageable. And I think that's what they're doing here. I think, Sean. So I agree with that. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? Kevin Feige, when asked straight up, are you guys rebooting the Marvel Cinematic Universe after Secret Wars? And he said, no. I mean, obviously, I think there's going to be changes, but how did you interpret what he said? Whatever you guys think, jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts.